more tips and tricks on how to fill from an ink sample, because it can be hard in aerometric fillers and mechanisms like on the TWSBI GO. All right, I wanted to specifically take this question because we've gotten some questions about filling an ink sample, using an ink sample to fill a TWSBI GO. TWSBI GO, very popular pen, relatively new as of this point from TWSBI. And it's not an aerometric filler, it's a piston filler. It's a push piston that has a spring on it, and it's representative of a few different types of pens out there. So I'm going to show you the Go specifically as my example, but I want you to understand the main principle of what's going on here, because that's going to be important not just for this pen, but for other types who are in a similar situation. So what happens with the TWSBI GO? And other pens do this too, the Visconti Homo sapiens, for example. You'll go to fill it. It's a 2 milliliter sample. I have this one right at about 2 mil. And I've put it in here, but there's a collar right here where the cap meets the body that is just enough to stop it from being able to go all the way to the bottom of the ink sample vial. And the way that this pen works, just like most pens, not all but most, is the filler hole is actually right up here. It fills right at the base of the feed where it meets the grip, right in there. And what happens when you go to put it into the vial, if you just have it straight up and down, there's a little bit of a gap, just a little bit. So that if I was to, I'm gonna try to do this without dumping ink all over my computer. If I push down, you're gonna see there that I'm not actually filling anything. Because what's happening is there's an air gap right here. I'm gonna get maybe a drop or two, but there's an air gap, so I cannot actually get the ink to make contact with the suction of the action that's happening when I'm using the piston. There is a hack that's not very difficult at all, but some people are just not aware of it, especially because the Go is a relatively low price pen. It's something that most people who are using it for the first time might be using samples because you don't have to buy a whole bottle, might be new to the hobby, so this could be really helpful to you. Really, the answer is very simple. All you got to do is tilt the vial. So you take it so that your feed is facing down when you tilt it, so that as you tilt it, that surface area of the ink spreads out a little bit and can make contact with that, kind of filling area, if you will. And then I'll go really slow with this particular pen. It's harder with something like a Homo sapiens. It's a vacuum filler because you have a little less control. But here, I'll see how close I can get in there. So here, I'm going to push it down. You can see there I got a few air bubbles. So I'm going to push it down, wait till it focuses. And then I'm going to very, very slowly let it go and let it fill up. And you can tilt it a little bit steeper as you are draining ink out of the vial. And then when I let it go, there's a tiny little air bubble here at the top, but that's no more than if I'd filled it from a full bottle of ink. And I basically have a full TWSBI GO here. So just by tilting it, that's it, I was able to completely fill my TWSBI GO from an ink sample vial. So just that tip alone, I think, will really change a lot of people's perspective about the Go and how it fills from a sample vial. So I could stop right now and say, I've answered your question, but I have one more trick I want to show you, something that I announced a while ago. I did a video on this like 5 or 6 years ago, I don't even remember where. Just want my paper towel, sorry. And it is the ink syringe filling method. So I want to teach this to you because I think it's also really cool and can be helpful with certain types of pens. So I have an ink syringe here, which is a blunt tip syringe, so it won't hurt anybody. I mean, you could hurt somebody, but it's it's not the same as like a diabetic needle or something like that. So it's kind of made specifically for filling pens in this kind of situation. I can suck up the entire ink vial up into this. And then with this, leaving the nib and everything in place, I can actually fill directly into the pen like this. Now, it won't work so great if I just fill without doing the mechanism, because it'll just kind of sit in there. So it takes a little bit of coordination, but if I am to depress the spring, and then as I let the spring go, I can just push down on the top of the syringe, and it will drop ink down into it. And it's basically sucking ink into, ooh, I got a little ink on my fingers. So you got to coordinate it a little bit. Oh gosh, making a mess. So with a little bit of effort, you probably use a paper towel in a better way than I did here to help catch it, but it can be done. Now you see why fountain pen people walk around with ink all over their fingers, right? So not as much my preferred method. I'd actually never tried this before with the TWSBI GO. I would need to practice it a couple of times to make sure that I get it down, but that is another way that it can be done. It's almost full here, except for what I spilled all over my fingers. So I'm gonna squeeze that back in here. That is an alternate method, which is clearly way worse, and you should just do the first one and not get ink all over your fingers. But that is how it's done. So a couple of different options for you, not just for the Go, but you can use kind of those same principles for anything else. Just about every pen has that place where it fills, right back there where the feed meets the grip section. Cool? Hopefully that helps you out.